WWE just delivered what might be the best women's match of 2026 so far, and if you didn't watch Evolve on the 11th of February, you missed an absolute classic that's going to be talked about for years to come. Kendal Gray and Karmen Petrovic tore the house down in an Evolve women's title match that had everything: incredible in-ring work, genuine emotion, shocking near falls, and a finish that has the entire wrestling community divided. And here's what has me absolutely fired up: this match proved that WWE's developmental system is producing stars that can already work at a main roster level, yet both of these women are being criminally underutilized and overlooked by the people making decisions about who gets called up and who stays in developmental hell. Before we break down every amazing moment from this instant classic, I need to know, have you been sleeping on WWE Evolve, or have you been watching the best wrestling show nobody's talking about? Drop your honest answer in the comments, because it's time we start giving these women the recognition they deserve. Let's set the stage, because the build-up to this match was perfect. Kendal Gray had been Evolve Women's Champion for 147 days, establishing herself as the top woman in the brand with a series of incredible defenses against everyone they put in front of her. She wasn't just winning, she was dominating, making it clear that she was levels above everyone else in the division. Her reign felt legitimate, her matches were consistently great, and she carried herself like a champion. Karmen Petrovic, on the other hand, had been on a completely different journey. She'd been grinding, taking losses, learning from mistakes, and slowly but surely climbing back up the rankings. She earned this title shot the hard way by winning a #1 contenders tournament where she beat 4 other women in increasingly difficult matches. By the time she got to Kendal Gray, she had all the momentum in the world, and the crowd was firmly behind her underdog story. Quick trivia question: how many days was Kendal Gray's reign as Evolve Women's Champion before this match? First correct answer gets pinned. The match took place at the WWE Performance Center in front of a hot crowd that was split pretty evenly between both competitors. That's when you know you've got a special match on your hands, when the crowd genuinely doesn't know who they want to win because both women are so compelling. The atmosphere was electric from the moment both women made their entrances. From the opening bell, it was clear this wasn't going to be your typical developmental match. Both women came out aggressive, neither willing to give an inch, both determined to prove they belonged on the biggest stage. The pace was fast, chain wrestling to start, feeling each other out, testing each other's abilities, and within the first 3 minutes, they'd already done more creative counters and reversals than some main roster matches do in 15 minutes. One thing that immediately stood out was the psychology. These weren't two inexperienced wrestlers just doing moves, they were telling a story. Kendal Gray worked as the confident champion who had an answer for everything, while Karmen Petrovic played the determined challenger who refused to back down no matter how many times she got knocked down. Every move had purpose, every sequence built on what came before, and you could feel the intensity building with each passing minute. Question for the technical wrestling fans: what's more important in a great match, innovative moves or strong psychology? Let me know your take in the comments. Around the 10-minute mark, we got our first holy shit moment. Karmen had Kendal on the outside and hit a suicide dive that looked absolutely brutal, but instead of staying down, Kendal popped right back up and caught Karmen with a superkick on the rebound that echoed through the performance center. The crowd lost their minds, and both women were down on the floor selling like their lives depended on it. When they got back in the ring, that's when this match kicked into another gear. The near falls started coming fast and furious. Kendal hit her signature running knee strike, Karmen kicked out at 2.9. Karmen locked in a crossface that looked like it was going to make Kendal tap. Kendal somehow got to the ropes. Back and forth, and the crowd was eating up every single second of it. What really impressed me was how they structured the match. This wasn't just a spot fest where they did move after move with no selling. They sold. They made you believe they were exhausted. They made you believe every move hurt. They made you invest in the outcome because it felt like either woman could win at any moment, and both deserved to win based on what they were putting into this match. Here's a question that might be controversial: would this match have been better or worse if it was on the main roster with a bigger crowd? Sound off below. At the 15-minute mark, we got what I think was the sequence of the night. Karmen went for a springboard maneuver, but Kendal caught her midair and transitioned into a German suplex. But Karmen landed on her feet, ran to the ropes, came back with a clothesline that Kendal ducked. Kendal went for a backdrop that Karmen flipped out of, and they ended up face to face in the center of the ring just staring at each other while the crowd gave them a standing ovation. That moment, that respect spot, that's when you knew this match was something special. It wasn't about who was heel or who was face at that point. It was about two elite performers pushing each other to their absolute limits and acknowledging that they were in the ring with someone just as good as they were. The finishing sequence was insane. Kendal went for her finisher, a ripcord knee strike she calls the Grey Matter, but Karmen somehow countered it into a roll-up for a near fall that had everyone thinking it was over. Kendal kicked out, but she was clearly shaken that Karmen came that close. Karmen saw the opening and went for her finisher, a GT as she calls the Karmen Clash, but Kendal slipped out, shoved Karmen into the corner, and hit a hesitation dropkick that looked absolutely devastating. What happened next is where the controversy starts. Kendal pulled Karmen to the center of the ring and went for the cover. The referee counted 1, 2. Karmen's shoulder came up at what looked like 2.99999. The crowd thought it was 3. The commentary team thought it was 3. Even Kendal thought it was 3 and started celebrating. But the referee said 2, and the match continued. Quick question, do you think that was a legitimate kickout or should the referee have counted 3? This one's going to divide the comments. Kendal was furious. She was arguing with the referee, convinced she'd won the match, wasting precious time while Karmen was recovering in the corner. And that moment of frustration cost her everything. As Kendal turned around, Karmen exploded out of the corner with a spear that looked like it broke Kendal in half. The crowd went nuclear. Karmen crawled over for the cover. 1, 2, 3. New champion Karmen Petrovic had done it. She'd ended Kendal Gray's 147-day reign and captured the Evolve Women's Championship in a match that will go down as one of the best in Evolve history. The celebration was emotional. Karmen was in tears, the crowd was chanting her name, and even Kendal Gray, after taking a moment to process the loss, showed respect by raising Karmen's hand before leaving the ring. It was a perfect ending to a perfect match, and it gave us a moment that felt genuinely earned rather than just manufactured drama. But here's where my frustration kicks in, and this is what I want to talk about for the rest of this video. This match was better than 90% of what we see on Raw and SmackDown. Kendal Gray and Karmen Petrovic just proved they can work at a main roster level, they can tell stories, they can get crowds invested, they can deliver match of the year candidates. So why are they still in developmental? Why aren't they on national television every week? Why is WWE sitting on this much talent and not using it? Let me ask you something. If this match had happened on Raw with the exact same work, would it be trending worldwide right now? Would people be calling it one of the best women's matches of the year? I think the answer is yes, and that's what makes this so frustrating. Here's your chance to fantasy book. If you were in charge of WWE, would you call up Kendal Gray, Karmen Petrovic, both, or neither? Explain your reasoning in the comments. The women's division on the main roster is stacked with talent, I'm not denying that. But when you have performers like Kendal and Karmen putting on matches of this quality and they are not even getting a look at the main roster, something is wrong with the system. How many incredible matches do they have to have before someone says, hey, maybe we should give these women a chance on Monday nights or Friday nights? And here's the other issue, Evolve is criminally underwatched. This show happens every week, it's available on Peacock, it features some of the best wrestling on the entire WWE network, and yet hardly anyone talks about it. Why? Because WWE doesn't promote it. Because it's treated as the forgotten middle child between NXT and the main roster. Because even though it's producing instant classics like this one, nobody knows it exists unless they specifically go looking for it. Let's talk about Kendal Gray for a second because I don't want her performance to get lost in all of this. Yes, she lost the title, but she looked absolutely incredible in defeat. She worked her ass off for 22 minutes, she made Karmen look like $1 million, and she showed the same championship presence in loss that she showed during her entire reign. Kendal Gray is ready for the main roster, and if WWE is smart, they'll pull the trigger on her sooner rather than later. As for Karmen Petrovic, this was a star-making performance. She went from being one of the women in Evolve to being the woman in Evolve. Her underdog story paid off in the best possible way, her in-ring work was flawless, and she's now the face of the brand going forward. The question is, how long before WWE realizes what they have with her and gives her the call-up she deserves? What's your prediction? Will either of these women be on the main roster by WrestleMania season? Give me your honest forecast. I also want to talk about what this match represents for women's wrestling as a whole. We've come so far from the days when women's matches were treated as bathroom breaks. We're now at a point where two women in developmental can have a better match than most main event programs, and it barely registers with the casual audience because they don't know where to find it. That needs to change. WWE needs to do a better job of promoting Evolve. They need to give these women a platform. They need to acknowledge that matches like this are happening and that fans should be watching. Because if they don't, we're going to keep having situations where incredible performers like Kendal and Karmen Petrovic are doing career-best work in front of 200 people at the Performance Center when they should be performing in front of 20,000 people in an arena. The match itself was rated 4.5 stars by most wrestling journalists who covered it, and honestly, I think that's underselling it. This was a full 5-star classic in my opinion, perfect pacing, perfect psychology, perfect storytelling, and a finish that made perfect sense. Both women walked away looking like stars, and the Evolve Women's Championship now feels more important than it has in months. Final question, and I want everyone to answer this one, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the Kendal vs Karmen Petrovic match? And if you haven't watched it yet, are you going to seek it out after hearing about it? Look, I'm going to be blunt. If you're a wrestling fan and you're not watching Evolve, you're missing out on some of the best wrestling happening anywhere in the world right now. This isn't hyperbole, this is facts. Matches like Kendal vs Karmen Petrovic don't come along every week, and when they do, they deserve to be celebrated, discussed, and shared with everyone who loves this business. WWE has a goldmine of talent in their developmental system, and they are barely scratching the surface of what these performers can do. Kendal and Karmen Petrovic just proved they belong on the biggest stages, and it's time for WWE to take notice before AEW or some other company comes calling with better offers and more opportunities. If this video got you hyped about this match, I need you to do something for me. Like this video so the algorithm pushes it to more people, share it with your wrestling friends who need to know about this match, and absolutely flood the comments with your reactions, your ratings, and your predictions for both of these incredible performers. This is Wrestling Zone 1, where we shine a spotlight on the matches and moments that deserve more attention, not less. Kendal vs Karmen Petrovic was a masterpiece, and both women deserve your respect, your recognition, and your support as they continue their journeys to the top of this industry. Subscribe for more coverage of the wrestling you should be watching, and let's make sure these women get the recognition they've earned.